It's the best and worst of last gen, reminiscing about the last generation of consoles as we move into the new one. Best. Excellent netcode for most first-person shooter and third-person style action games. One of the biggest letdowns of the PlayStation 2 and Xbox era is that they did have games that had online gameplay capabilities. However, everything was still in its development and evolutionary, even infantile stages, and the content was just not up to snuff. With this last console generation, especially when it came to first-person shooters and action games, for the most part, these game developers were able to perfect the netcode to the point where you could play these games competitively online and actually learn at a high level how to play these games in a competitive environment. This was so interesting because previous to this, you would have to go to, say, a LAN center and hook up multiple consoles to each other in order to have a really fun competitive experience because the online gameplay was lacking with lag. In this last generation, we really hit the nail on the head when it came to that, and I think that basically kind of moved us into an upper echelon where you see things emerging like MLG and others, and more people being able to participate in that style of event. Worst. The netcode for fighting games. One of the most glaringly apparent things that they did not get right in the last console generation was the online multiplayer gameplay for competitive fighting games. And I don't just mean one. I mean Street Fighter, I mean Tekken, I mean Soul Calibur. Pretty much any fighting game that came out in the last generation had online gameplay capability that really just was not up to snuff when it comes to a competitive environment. Whether it was dropping inputs, whether it was rollbacks, whether it was visibly really horrendous slow motion lag. These fighting games, for whatever reason, could never get online gameplay right, as opposed to some of the other first-person shooters and third-person action games. And it was quite disappointing because there were people who really were like, wow, this is the first time I could play my friend from across the country or across the globe. And a lot of the times when you go to do it, you have a horrible match. Now, it's funny because a whole generation of people who just started playing fighting games with this last console generation have never played people offline before, and they don't even understand the concept of lag. So for them, they're like, oh, that's just how the game plays. And for them to actually jump from the online arena to an offline tournament would be impossible, yet they don't understand because they have no frame of reference. It's quite ridiculous. So the whole deal with fighting games being played online not being up to stuff was so disappointing. In some cases, game developers started instituting handicaps, such as, oh, here's a lag switch built into the game that you can adjust for how you like to play. With games such as Street Fighter 4, they relaxed the button inputs and the inputs to actually pull off special moves because they realized that probably in a strict online environment, they weren't going to work. So very disappointing that games now, in order to become more mainstream, basically kind of sold out when it comes to the online gameplay and basically dumbed down their games so that they can possibly be played at a higher level, at a more casual environment per se. So fighting games still haven't, in this case, even today with Killer Instinct, people have already discovered problems with the netcode of that game not being in sync. So even in the next gen, it seems like we just still can't get it right when it comes to online gameplay with fighting games, and that's a shame. Up next, let's focus on the one thing everyone's probably thinking about: the games. Be right back.